the unknown. So dip inside your soul and dig a little deeper. Unlock the unknown. Discovering the truth will make you feel freer. Like a raging bull gives pain. Mysteries are hurricanes. The truth you seek is unbeknown. Unlock the unknown.
I won't accept it, what the skeptics even have to say. They disconnected, redirected, and it's so cliche. So much evidence is building up in our possession. So many elements conclude the answer to this question. From the page of myth to actuality, to unlock a locked door, where's the magic key?
Unlock the unknown. So dip inside your soul and dig a little deeper. Unlock the unknown. Discovering the truth will make you feel freer. Like a raging bull gives pain. These mysteries are hurricanes. The truth you seek is unbeknown. Unlock the unknown.
We have 77 counties in Oklahoma. We put reports in them in 66 counties.
Every tribe has a name for each thing. Cheyenne is massive misstep, which means giant monster.
These are some of the best cast footprints that I've seen in a very, very long time.
North Canadian River Project, we basically focus our investigations on the North Canadian River or Central Oklahoma.
Welcome back to Squatch Ranger Files, episode 35. Hey guys, hope everybody is staying home and staying clear of all these many distractions going on in the world. I hope everyone is staying safe and staying at home, and I'm going to bring you some Bigfoot reports for your listening pleasures. Also, on our Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization Facebook page, we've had a recent Bigfoot sighting on March 21st of 2020, and it was in a location called The Narrows, north of Broken Bow, Oklahoma, McCurtain County. We will feature that report on a later episode, but for now, if you want to read that encounter yourself, go to the Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization Facebook page. If you have a Bigfoot encounter story and would like to have it featured on this program, please email me at squatchranger@gmail.com. Alright guys, let's dive right in. Here is Squatch Ranger Files, episode 35. Number 1. Man has roadside encounter near Pineland, 2018, Sabine County, Texas. Class A, nighttime sighting. We moved up here to Arkansas about 14 months ago. While hauling the trailer from out of East Texas, I saw one standing on the side of the road in the middle of the night. It was just below Pineland, Texas. My lights caught it as it was turning away from me on the edge of the opposite side. It didn't run, just walked away into the night. In the headlights, I'd say dark brown to black. Kinda wormy looking, like it wasn't healthy. Not as beefy as the Arizona sighting. Maybe 7 to 8 feet. It was kinda humped forward, like something looks when exhausted. I only saw the profile, and then the backside as it turned away. Follow up. NOBRO investigators report. I spoke with the witness via the internet, and together we were able to locate the eyewitness's sighting location on a map. The witness provided the following information. It was somewhere in the stretch between where the lake ends and the south end of town. Not a very long stretch, but I know it was after passing the guardrails going through the marsh area. This sighting location is included in this report. This sighting report comes from an area where the Sabine National Forest and the Sam Rayburn Reservoir meet. Sam Rayburn Reservoir is a reservoir that is fed by the Angelina River, the major tributary of the Neches River. The wildlife habitats created by the Sam Rayburn Reservoir has an impact on migratory waterfowl. The lake offers feeding and resting grounds for migratory birds before they proceed south toward the Gulf Coast. There is also a resident population of wood ducks that remains on the Sabine National Forest year-round. Among the game animals found on Sabine National Forest are white-tailed deer, squirrel, woodcock, dove, wild turkey, and quail. This marshy area could serve as a good hideout for a Bigfoot to hunt for food and have access to the Sam Rayburn Reservoir as a water source. This case is now closed. Number 2. Campers hear wood knocks and whoops while camping in Atoka County. 2015, Southeast District, Atoka County, Oklahoma. Class B, wood knocks, and Class B, vocalizations. Date of incident, February 7th, 2015. Date of report, June 10th, 2019. Investigator, Troy Hudson. Location, McGee State Park, Atoka County, Oklahoma. This report comes from the eyewitness that knows the investigator through a mutual friend. This eyewitness works in public safety and is a skilled outdoorsman. The incident took place on a Saturday in February of 2015 at the McGee State Park, McGee Creek Lake. The eyewitness was with his 2 sons looking for a place to camp and do some fishing and hiking. When they arrived, there was no one at this particular picnic area. They had arrived at 0900 hours that Saturday. The area was clean and looked inviting to the father and 2 sons. They set up camp to the west of the large pavement parking area. It wasn't until sunset, after they had cooked some supper, that they started to hear what the witness described as someone hitting a tree with a bat or a large thick piece of wood. The witness is familiar with the Sasquatch phenomenon. He didn't even consider it until he heard a whoop about 20 minutes after the knocking had stopped. He described 2 fast knocks to the east along the shoreline, with one other back to the south. The whoop came from a heavily wooded area to the southeast, marked on the second picture. The witness's oldest son, 13 years old, asked him if that was a Bigfoot making all that noise. He didn't want to scare him, but he also jokingly said, "It could be. Maybe they like our dinner." Nothing else took place during the evening hours. It was about 0500 in the morning when the witness started to step out of his tent to conduct morning rituals. When he stood up, he heard a noise over behind his tent. He heard something run off as he remembered it sounded like a child running and giggling. He looked over towards his 2 sons' tent and walked over and peeked through the rain flap. He could see both were sound asleep. He conducted his ritual and climbed back into his tent, dozed off for about 2 hours, and was awoken by his 2 sons trying to get his attention. When he stepped out of the tent, his 2 sons said their fishing poles were missing, and their cooler was flipped over, and the rest of their food and ice were all over the ground. The father started to investigate, realizing maybe what he had heard was a raccoon and had gotten into the cooler. The fishing poles were a mystery. The 2 boys found them down by the water. They had been casted out into the water and had floated back to shore about 20 yards away. There, enough line was casted out that whomever casted must have made the cast about 20 to 30 yards. The 2 sons pleaded with their father that they hadn't done it, and they were asleep all night. Nothing else took place the rest of the morning. They began to break camp and were packing up to depart 12:30, when the youngest son, 10 years old, was standing at the shore looking through his dad's binoculars across the lake and said he just saw a bear. The father walked down to see if he could see it. He asked the son if he was sure it was a bear. He said, "Yes, I saw another one too." Area marked on the 3rd picture. He asked him to describe the bears. The son said the small one was all black. The other one was kind of brown and real tall. The big one took the hand of the small one, and they both went into the woods. The father asked, "Were they walking like bears do on all arms and legs?" The son said, "No, Dad, they walked on 2 legs like us." The father couldn't see anything, and they packed the rest of their camping gear and departed for home. Follow up. NOBRO Investigators Report. This area has a rich history of Sasquatch sightings and known eyewitnesses, including this investigator. The interesting part from this report is the fishing poles. Who or what carried the fishing poles from the campsite down to the water and casted them as if they were fishing? What did the young boy see? There have been bears seen in the area. However, do bears hold hands with their young and walk together standing upright? This case is now closed. Number 3. Brothers hear boulders being thrown into water. 1969, Southeast District, Johnston County, Oklahoma. Class B, rock throwing. Class B, wood knocks. Class B, heavy footsteps. And Class B, vocalizations. I had an encounter with a group of Bigfoot on Blue River in Connerville, Oklahoma in 1969. Sure, it was a long time ago, but I remember every detail. I was 14 at the time of the event. Me and my little brother Rick decided to go on a camping trip down on Big Blue River one day. We took enough supplies and things like matches, a .22 rifle, a string and fishing tackle, a knife, and a few bags of food. We walked about 2 miles down the river and we found an old concrete building. We found a ravine that was cut into the riverbank. I told my brother that we could cover the ravine with brush to make a windbreak, and that is what we spent most of the day doing. That and digging out a little fireplace into the side of the ravine and then digging down to the hole for the firebox to make a chimney. We gathered firewood to burn for the night. We then went hunting for some nice long saplings to use for fishing poles. We took our string and tied it to the poles, got out our tackle box and fastened our hooks, weights, and corks to our string and set at the creek bank. I had the .22 rifle next to me. We built a campfire and cooked up some potatoes and hung some bacon over the fire on sticks to cook. We had dug up a can of worms at the house, and I had a jar of big grasshoppers for bait. We started fishing. The one thing I wish that I had to bring was a flashlight. We were fishing for hours, but we never got a bite. I told Rick that there was something strange about that. It was getting dark, and I heard a splat sound in the river. I did not recognize the sound, so I passed it off, thinking that it was probably a beaver slapping his tail on the water. We started getting bites, but once more something was not right. The only thing that we were catching were big long eels. They were huge compared to what I had ever seen. Then I heard that sound again. Splat! This time it was closer. Once more I am thinking that it must be a beaver slapping his tail. So we were pulling in eels, but no fish. We took a break and ate our food. It turned out to be finger food, but it sure tasted good. We got our pile of firewood into the shelter and started a fire in our fireplace. We got a nice little fire going and were laying down on beds of leaves. I heard a splat again. This was no splat like a beaver's tail could make. I also realized that there had not been beavers on the river for years. So according to my 14-year-old brain, it must be a herd of deer splashing in the water. Me and Rick came out of the shelter to check our fishing lines. I was thinking that we could spend the night in that concrete room. The room was there, but the door was missing. I didn't like it because it was cold and had no way to build a fireplace, but it made a good outhouse, or bathroom. So we started pulling in our fishing lines. I took the eels and put them in an onion bag that we brought to put the fish in, and we pulled our poles up and put them away for the next morning. We then sat down on the riverbank and were just hanging out when all of a sudden, ka-whoosh, a huge splash in the river. I started thinking that someone is throwing big rocks into the river to scare us. I grabbed my .22 rifle and stood up with it, and I said to Rick, that was a huge boulder. It had to weigh 200 pounds, so I yelled out, "What are you doing? Who are you?" That's when a barrage of boulders started slamming into the river. I yelled that I was going to shoot, but it didn't stop, so I shot over their heads to scare them away. I heard a motion that sounded like a stampede of cattle running up the riverbank. Then, as soon as it stopped, they turned back and started throwing boulders again. This time, I could hear tree limbs being broken, and the limbs were being beaten against the tree trunks. These tree limbs sounded like they had to be around 3 feet in diameter, because when they broke, they made a loud pop, and they were hitting the tree trunks so hard that you could hear the tree trunks vibrating. I got afraid for me and my little brother's life. I was afraid they would cross the river and kill us both. I yelled, "Stop, or I will shoot you!" But they did not stop. I thought that maybe we should run away into the darkness and find our way back in the dark, but instead I fired 3 rounds into the crowd with the intention to kill. I heard a scream and a loud moan. Then the sound of a herd of buffalo running away. I mean the sound of a stampede with great weight that was vibrating the ground, and a roar like thunder. We got into our little lean-to and laid down. We built the fire hotter to warm up the chilly lean-to. I fell asleep with my rifle in my hands, pointed toward the river. I laid there all night, catnapping and running things through my mind. I was thinking, what in the hell did we just experience? There is no cow or horse or deer that could throw boulders into the river, much less tear large limbs off of trees. I thought and I thought. Then I started remembering rumors around town that there had been Bigfoot sightings and people were reporting these sightings. I then realized that me and my little brother had encountered a night of being terrorized by Bigfoot. The following week, I was out in our backyard. It was about 4 o'clock in the evening when I heard a loud boom and loud sounds that echoed for at least a minute. I had a feeling that I knew what it was. A couple of days passed, so I decided to go investigate. I grabbed my .22 rifle and started hiking down to the river. On the way, I saw these really big black and white, with red, birds fly over. They landed in a big tree close enough for me to get a good look at them. They were the biggest woodpeckers that I had ever seen. I stood in awe at the sight of these birds. I think there were 4 of them. I started on my way again. I finally reached the site where my brother and I had spent the night. I was shocked to see that something had totally demolished the concrete house that was there. I don't know how it happened, but there it was in pieces, lying on the ground. It looked like the last wall that fell had been rammed inward at the middle, and a huge indenture was in the concrete. Something had to have some tremendous amount of force to cave a solid concrete wall in like that. I looked around for signs of any tracks, but saw nothing. I looked for tire tracks, I looked for dozer tracks, but there were none. The house wall was on a strange slope, so if any type of vehicle had hit it, the vehicle would most likely roll over because the slope was that steep going down to the creek. I do not know of anyone going down there with a sledgehammer. I saw no shoe tracks. I am still wondering if the Bigfoot had destroyed the house because of the scent that I had left. They may have destroyed it out of anger for injuring or killing 1 or 2 of them. I can only guess. I started thinking about why they were throwing rocks in the water too. Were they doing that as a means of some kind of group fishing? Maybe they were hungry and it was time to eat? Maybe they had run out of fish and were eating eels? I can only assume. I came back home and I just forgot the whole thing, but every now and again, I would tell the story to a friend. My brother was too young to remember the incident. He got poisoned with carbon monoxide gas, and I guess that he lost the memory for good. I will never forget. If you go through the field that is behind the Connorville schoolhouse and turn left at the river, I believe the remains of that concrete room will still be there. That is, unless the concrete was into the river by Bigfoot. Oh yeah, about those birds, they were discovered to be an extinct species of woodpecker about 10 years ago. I had been talking about them for almost 40 years by then. Follow up, NOBRO, Investigators Report. The witness in this report was only 14 years old at the time of the incident, but he is still able to describe the encounter with great detail. Although the witness never saw the creature, we can go through a few steps of logic and reasoning to come to a conclusion that this eyewitness was in the presence of a Sasquatch could be a possibility to explore. The eyewitness said it best in his report. "There is no cow or horse or deer that could throw boulders into the river, much less tear large limbs off of trees." As a boy, the eyewitness was already going through the list of known animals in the area and eliminating each animal that cannot throw large boulders. This helps lend credibility to the eyewitness report because he was trying to insert known animals into his final conclusion. A Bigfoot creature was the last thing on his list. And at this point in time, not a lot of people in America had much knowledge of Bigfoot, let alone in Oklahoma. The eyewitness did say local stories of Bigfoot in this area, and this was the only reason he came to this possibility. In this case, we can only determine that this boy was being intimidated by a human or possibly a Sasquatch. The eyewitness later stated that the cement building structure had no human tracks, animal tracks, or vehicle tracks around the area. A human could not demolish a cement-type building structure without the use of heavy machinery, so we can rule out a human. Also, humans probably won't go crashing through the woods in the dark without the use of night vision, which would have been extremely limited at this point in time, if at all available. Adding up all these clues helps us open up the possibility that this could have been a Sasquatch in this particular instance. One final side note from this report: the large woodpeckers the witness saw during this encounter were ivory-billed woodpeckers. This case is now closed. The Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization, or NOBRO, was founded by a group of native Oklahoma residents that have been involved in Sasquatch research and investigations for the past 15 years. These investigators and researchers come from all walks of life. They represent tribal affiliations from the Choctaw, Creek, and Cherokee nations. The NOBRO receives and responds to reports from all over the state of Oklahoma. They have conducted investigations that involve tribal, public, and private land. They have responded to reports that have occurred within hours of the witness seeing something, to reports that are years old in nature. Please visit our official website. I will provide a link in the description of this video. Also check out the NOBRO Bigfoot Sightings Database. I will provide a link to the description of this video. That's the Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization. Now, let's get back to Squatch Ranger Files.
Unlock the unknown.
I won't accept it what the